Mám je, fungo. Spojím to tohle. Tak to dám. Daj si to najít.
Výborně.
Chceš začít přesně?
Asi jo. No, mě to trvá docela dlouho, ale tak aby byl čas na to.
So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next speaker, Ivo Beck, who will tell you something about how to assemble business applications.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming. Me as a developer, I keep a portfolio of my favorite libraries, frameworks, tools. Whenever I encounter any new library, any new interesting framework, I like to experiment with it, right? I like to create prototypes. So part of my presentation is a demo, technological demo, where I experiment with web components, Polymer, microservices using Vertex, Docker, BPM key execution server. So there are a lot of tools. And so I've put together this presentation to show you an alternative way of developing business applications. However, even if you don't plan to write any business application soon, I believe you will find it interesting in web development. So let's look at a business application. From my understanding, a business application should clearly serve its purpose. We should really know the reason why we develop a business application, because we want to automate some part of work for an employee. So the cost of the application should, we should have the return of our investment in developing a business application. Also, the business application, we develop it for our end users, right? So they could be effective in their work. So that's another reason we should focus on the usage patterns, on the user interfaces for our end users. The business application, because it's business application, there can be a lot of changes for optimizations of the application, or often the application needs to comply some regulations. And because they can change, we need to be flexible in that. We need to focus on it. Also, today we can use mobile phones, tablets, computers. So this application needs to run everywhere, right? And also be accessible everywhere. Meaning by that, I mean that even if you don't have internet access, which can happen, you need to be able to put your data into your business application on your mobile phone, for example. So when we develop a business application, we need to focus also on the resources, not just only about the budget, but also people and time. So it wouldn't cost us a lot of time, a lot of people that needs to make changes in the business application. Of course, from the business point of view, we should be able to see how the business application performs. We should see the performance indicators when we do changes, when we optimize our business application. We should see how it influenced the operating of the application. Okay, so let's now focus on developing a simple web client. From my perspective, what I currently know, I'm a Java developer, so I would use perhaps JSF or Google App Toolkit. However, I also am interested in JavaScript, but I'm not a JavaScript developer. I just see it like a very good technology where there are a lot of developers. There is real power in it because, for example, did you know that every 16 minutes there is a new JavaScript framework? Even new versions of it. So the development is really fast there. But for business, I believe we want to have something stable, right? I want to ask you, who of you would prefer Java for a simple web client? Right. For a web client, yeah, when you want to develop a user interface, so for example using JSF or Google App Toolkit. So.
From my experience, what we've learned is because we were developing in GWT and JSF, however, the results were not that nice when it comes to the user interface. So now mostly we do all the backend and we just make an API, and then we have a front-end team to make all the front-end.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. So I had that feeling too. I'm a Java developer, but I would like to make my very simple web client with JavaScript, but I'm not a JavaScript developer, and for me it's quite complicated. However, I found web components very interesting because web components is actually a standard. It's a group of 4 specifications: custom elements, HTML imports, templates, and Shadow DOM. Custom elements enables us to create our own elements next to our HTML elements. You surely know HTML elements like div, span, and so on. So in our example, we have paper toolbar. It's our custom element. Next specification, HTML imports, defines that we can import our HTML document into another HTML document. Next specification, templates, enables us to define part of HTML which is not interpreted by the browser. So we can use it really as a template. We need to use the template. We can just somehow say it to the browser and it will interpret it. And the last specification, Shadow DOM, defines that everything what's inside an element stays inside an element and won't influence the surrounding, the other elements outside of it. Vice versa, the HTML document itself won't change the behavior or the looking of our custom element, for example, the paper toolbar. Of course, in case we don't really intend to change it, because the custom element can be modified. We can set it by our attributes. We can custom the looking by CSS variables. But we will see everything from that. In the example, we have a paper toolbar. You can see how it could look. We just defined there that we want the menu, we want title, and other buttons. But all the logic or JavaScript, CSS styles, it's inside of the paper toolbar, right? Currently, we have more than 1,600 of repositories of web components on the page customelements.io. Not every web component is a visual component. It can be a component for offline mode of the web browser, so the page would work in offline mode. It can be anything which would help you with developing your web applications. Yeah, what I could mention here also is the browser support. Currently, there are only 2 browsers which natively supports web components. They're Chrome and Opera. The other browsers, it's also recommended to use are polyfills. Polyfills are just a JavaScript library which adds the support for the browser. So actually, all browsers are supported by the polyfills. Okay, when you start looking for some web components, you'll quickly find Polymer Elements. Polymer Elements are divided into 7 categories. I won't go into detail to all of them, but we will look at one of the elements, paper input, which we can use in our forms. So here we see all the groups in catalog of Polymer. The paper input is in paper elements, and we'll find it here. Okay, here are some examples how we can use the paper input, the attributes. Here is the reference, many other attributes we can use there. What I want to show you is that we can look at a demo of using the paper input. So when we are looking for some setting of our paper input, we can find it here. For example, text area or password. And here we see how it's actually set, right? Here is type password. What I find interesting is that every element has its own repository, so we can find easily the implementation of the element. It's always called the element.html, and there can be also other elements, of course. So when we look at the implementation, we there see the definition of the element. Here we have a template, how the element is defined. As I said, the template just defined, yeah, there is some DOM element, but please browser don't interpret it. It's just a template. So it's interpreted when we actually use the element, right? Here in the template, we have input, just an HTML element, a lot of attributes we can set there. That's all for now, and the element is tested, right? There are tests, unit tests for the element, and our demo application. So we can look at the demo page. be inspired by that. The nice thing about putting polymers as owner repositories is that there are many contributors. So even if you aren't a JavaScript developer like me, you can file issues if you encounter any and put it there and so on. So let's go back to the presentation. Alright, so what's actually Polymer? Polymer is just a library which helps us to develop our own custom Polymer elements. What I like about Polymer is that we can define our elements declaratively. So there is just a little code, little JavaScript code that we need. The important part is the template, which we have seen in the paper input. And the template just defines how the element should be generated. So in our example of user detail, we want there the name of the user and his email in a div element. And in the properties, we set there the attributes, user attribute. What we define there, it's a type of object. We can set there also the default value. For example, I don't know, some empty user or something like that. Next to properties, we can define the methods, which we can call on the element, and etc. And there we see the usage of our custom element. It's very simple. User detail. We set there our user from, for example, from a list, and that's all. Okay. We've seen that paper elements, particularly paper elements, use material design. Material design is just another specification. It defines visual, motion, and interaction design. Why I like it is that it shows us like we get from it the unified experience across devices and platforms. So whenever we use the elements on mobile phones or browser, it will change the behavior of the elements, how it will look, and so on. Here in the web page, Material Palette, it's a very nice, simple application where you just select your primary color and secondary color. And quickly you can see, how would I change it? Quickly we can see how our application could look. And then we can decide, okay, this is what we want. And we can download the Polymer CSS. It's a part of code which we just can copy to our application and it will change the looking. Okay. So now I would like to show you my technology demo. It's a vacation planner. As I said, it uses the web components, Polymer Elements, or my custom elements, etc. I just want to show you how we can operate with the applications, so you would have the understanding. Then we would go into details how it was implemented. Okay, the application is running here. We see we have two users. Well, the Ernest is a user and Sarah is his manager. So as an Ernest, we want to apply for a leave, and there we put there our ID. Ernest wants to go to Prague. See how the page is changing, right? And the animation. And we want to go there from Monday to Friday. We apply the leave. It's being submitted and accepted. Great. Here we should see our requests. Okay, here is the request, dear Nest. It's our own request. The status is waiting. Now we can look at why it's not approved immediately. So here we see that it's waiting for the approval of manager. Great. There will be some more tasks to do, but we will change to the manager, Sarah. Here we will see the awaiting vacation request. We will select the request. We see, Ernest requested for the vacation to go to Prague. Okay, here from there. We will approve it. It's completed. And here we see the team planned vacations. So everybody who is under manager will be here. Here the status is approved and the process is finished. Right. Okay. That's it. So notice that everything what you see is actually a web component. There are web components inside web components, etc. Everything is actually dynamically generated. So there is no hard-coded form, for example, to apply a leave. When I would want to, I would just add a field somewhere else. I will show you in a moment. So the same applies to the tables. They are also generated. I just select which columns I want to show. That's all. So let's go back to the presentation. Okay, the first thing we wanted to do was to fill a form to apply for a leave. So I modeled it actually in Business Central, in Form Modeler. I just put there all the fields, set the labels, set which fields are required, change the order, etc. So whenever I want, I can add some fields, I can change how the form would look like, and so on. The next thing, a very important thing, is actually the business logic for our application. I want it to be flexible. It's a business application. We expect a lot of changes. We want it to have the business logic as transparent as possible, so everybody who is involved would understand what's happening in our application. When anybody needs to change their thing, they can just change the process. In a process, we see two parts. The top part is actually assigned to the user. The bottom part is for the manager. At the start of the process, we just put there the data from our form. Because we set there only the user, we get also the manager. So we call a remote web service to get manager of the user. And next service, next call is to persist our vacation request into a database. So there is another call to our web service. After that, we want the request to be approved by manager. So we wait for his input, and then based on the decision of the manager, there is a gateway. Based on whether it's approved, we set the status of the request as approved, otherwise as denied, and then the process ends. One last thing. The process uses BPM notation. It's business process modeling and notation. It's a standard notation for modeling business processes. So you might have already seen it somewhere. It just not define only how we should model it. It also defines how every element of the process behaves. This is a project lifecycle. As I mentioned, I used something which I called Business Central. It's a business process management platform where you can when you can create your new project. In this project, you can you can add your business assets, whether it's the process, our business logic, or forms. Other assets like business rules, etc. Then we will decide we want to build our project, so we'll build it. It will create something what's called a KJAR. It's a knowledge Java archive, which contains all our business assets. It contains process, forms, etc. Then it will deploy our KJAR, our knowledge Java archive, into Maven repository, and this cycle can continue. We can increase the project version, modify our assets, we change the process a little bit, we change the forms, and other things. Okay, so we have our knowledge Java archive with the assets inside of our Maven repository. And we want to execute them, right? We want to execute the process, we want to start it. So the optimal way how to do it is using a BPM key execution server, which is just designed for running business processes. We have there process services, task services, rule services. So we have a lot of services we can use to start process, to get a list of tasks, to get a list of running processes, etc. We can also add our own services if we need to. All those services are available via REST API, also JMS, but we will use just only the REST API. The only thing to make it working is to create a container. This container will have just a name. It will link to our knowledge Java archive, the archive which contains the assets. And that's it. Then we will have everything available to run. Okay, this is the overall architecture. We have the vacation planner web application. The web application actually uses the web components, Polymer Elements, and our custom web components. Key web components and vacation web components. Key web components communicate to our BPM key execution server to start a process, to get a list of tasks, to get a list of running processes, and so on. So we encapsulate all the logic into these elements, into these web components. The next part, vacation web components, those are components which partly can use key web components. So we have web components inside, we have key web components inside vacation web components. Also, we have their components to communicate to user management web service to get a list of users, as we have seen on the front page, on the home page. Also, we have components to communicate to vacation web service to get a list of approved vacations, for example. And these web services process data to MongoDB. They query the data there too, and BPM key execution server, microservices, and MongoDB, they are all running in Docker. So those are the containers which we can horizontally scale. Okay. I was mentioning our custom Kia Polymer Elements. I developed a few of them just to see how the custom elements can be implemented. So I was asking question, what we want to see on our web page, how we want to use it. So for example, the basic thing is to show just a form and to send it to the server, right? So I was asking, what do we need to just show the form and start the process? Of course, it's the requester, it's the user who wants to start the process. It's the container, it's the name of container which links to our knowledge Java archive, which contains all the processes, forms, etc. And because the knowledge Java archive can contain more processes than one, we set there also the process ID to identify which process we want to start. And also I want to set name of button, so I put it there too. And this is the only definition we need to actually generate a form dynamically. I didn't say there anything about forms, and it also will generate a button apply, which will start a process when we click on it. There is no JavaScript. There is nothing we need to set. Everything is inside. Right. The other example, get task list, is even simpler. I just wanted to show a list of tasks for a particular manager, and not just any task. I want to show a list of tasks to approve a vacation. So I put there a task name, approve vacation. That's not all. I would, in the content of the element, I would select all the columns which I want to show in my table of the task list for the user. And that's all. Again, there's no JavaScript or the JavaScript to get a list of tasks, to get a list of variables, etc. It's everything inside. So now I want to show you the most useful web component, I believe is good. It's Iron Ajax. Iron Ajax is a web component which you can use to communicate to your REST API. The only thing you need to define there is the URL, parameters, how you would handle the response. So when it's JSON, okay, I set there JSON, and then I set there on response to handle the response. I can use the content, for example, to set some template. And that's all. Of course, I can set there other attributes, for example, a body. Here we see an example of that. Content type, whether we send there JSON, XML, or other things. Notice there is a Boolean attribute auto. It means that whenever we change URL or parameters, it will send the request again. So it's automatically sending a request based on changes. When we don't want to send it automatically, we can use a method called generate request. It will send a request on demand. Okay, so now notice that there is on a response. What does it mean is that we wait for an event called response, and to handle it, we always add the on dash. Okay, so in the source code, we can look how it's actually implemented, how we can fire our own event. So, no. Okay. Okay. Here we have handler response. Here we fire a new event response. We send there the content for the event and whether it will bubble to the parents or not. And that's all. Very simple code. As a Java developer, it's very simple. I can use most of the operations like in Java, and only thing I had to learn was just the structure. How would I develop my custom elements? Do we have time?
Yes.
5 minutes. Great. Okay, so if you want to start using Polymer and web components, I recommend you to start with Polymer Starter Kit. It's a very simple application. I use it even for my demo. It has already some content, so you will just change your menu, the content of the pages, and so on. Also, seed element is a good example how to develop your custom element. So you can start always with it. The presentations of the first Polymer Summit are available if you want to go into details of some things. I like, for example, the accessibility. Then there is documentation and, of course, the demo application, the source code of the demo application, where you can find the microservices using Vertex, where you can find the processes, the Polymer application, and so on. So, since we are getting to the end, I want to stress three important things. Web components as a standard, so use it. You will get a lot of benefits from it. Be flexible in adapting to changes. Show real usages of your common REST API operations, and become independent on any JavaScript library, because they evolve very quickly, right? Thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Okay.
Do you know how Polymer handles search engine optimization?
Search engine optimizations. Well, I don't know. It's my first application using web components and Polymer. I was experimenting with it. I don't know how it was. But because Google uses it a lot, it changes their own web applications to Polymer. For example, the gaming YouTube uses Polymer and so on. So I believe that there has to be some support for search engines.
The web interface which we saw, what was it running on? It was some engines, or what was the underlying web server?
Yeah, I run there just simple Python HTTP server. You can use any server you want to. It doesn't matter. It's only a JavaScript, right? So it runs everywhere.
The web interface is completely static web page.
It's a dynamic web page because you have there the JavaScript. But did you answer your question?
On server or on client?
It's on client. Everything is on client. The web client is on client. Please.
Here is a part of JBoss BPM suite, right?
The custom elements.
I mean BPM server.
Yeah, the BPM KS server is part of the product BPM Suite. It's also available as a community project on jbpm.org, so you can download it.
I'm wondering on some production experience with GPU's BPM Suite or Kia execution server.
Yeah, there exist customers which use BPM Suite in production.
And do you have some?
Like me?
Sorry, I just I don't wonder whether is it powerful enough, how many processes can I write in some interval?
Yeah, there can be hundreds of running processes, or even more. I'm not sure exactly, but since it's used in production, and you can scale it actually. You can scale the key execution server or Business Central, which can run business processes as well. So.
And, sorry, do you know if some customer in Czech Republic use GPU's BPM Suite?
Oh, I don't know that.
Sorry.
Any other question? All right, so thank you.
Co ještě vzpomenu, jak se to
Kdo má?
vlastně jako backend Mongo. Umožňuje to používat normální databáze?
Jo, určitě. Já jsem to použil jenom pro ty microservices, protože já mám rád Mongo a protože jsem používal JavaScript a tam jsem použil JSON samozřejmě, tak mě to přišlo jako nejjednodušší řešení, abych to nekonvertoval.
Tradicionalisti. Mongo se jim nedá moc moc.
Jo, to rozumím.
Ještě druhá věc, jenom abych se ujistil. Polymer je nezávislý vizuální projekt, nebo prostě na zobrazování. BPM je v podstatě taky nezávislý projekt. Nebo je to nějak spojený?
Jo, jsou to na sobě nezávislé projekty a ten Polymer, já jsem nezměnil prezentaci, ale není to jediná implementace, jak lze vytvářet ty webové komponenty. Webové komponenty jsou... Jo, určitě. Webové komponenty jsou standard. Že? A Polymer je jeden způsob, jak vytvářet ty webové komponenty, další je třeba Xtext, je knihovna.
Já jsem prostě z toho JavaScriptu, takže to vlastně neznám.
No, právě pro mě to bylo taky nový, ale vždycky jsem chtěl jít prostě tím směrem toho JavaScriptu, jenom se mně nelíbilo, jak rychle se to všechno mění v tom JavaScriptu. A takhle, když se to vlastně zaobalí těma webovými komponentama, tak v té aplikaci používám potom jenom webový komponent.